Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Do It for a Living Shop Life video blog. So in the previous episode, I showed you my toolbox and how I had all the box foam laid out in most of the drawers, and that's how I kept everything quite organized for the tools anyway. On the cars I work on, like clutches and installs as such. So I also have a toolbox here in my engine room, and this toolbox, as I mentioned in the previous episode, I wanted to lay it out so that way I could also use the shadow foam here and simplify going through the toolbox, so that way when I'm building an engine, I don't have to go through 20 different drawers 20 different times. And what I was thinking of doing in the previous episode was making a drawer for each particular engine I build. So like a Ford G63 drawer, a 4B11 drawer, maybe a Ford drawer for the EcoBoost stuff. And so as I started to think this through in my head, and I actually laid this out several times already, I found a couple interesting things. One was obvious as soon as I started doing it, was that the 4G63 and the 4B11 motors are nearly identical in the tools you use. There's only like maybe 2 or 3 different tools for the 4B11 that you don't use on the 4G63. And so that made it quite a bit easier because I can just combine the two of them into one, and then just have sectioned off areas, one for the 4B11, one for the 4G63 on the same drawer. And the number of tools is not that big, so it's pretty easy to fit it in one drawer. And there's a couple other tools that I have laid out here, and I'll show you in a second. It's actually right behind me here. So for like ring compressors for putting the pistons into the block, I've got several different sizes, and they don't fit in a single drawer if you do it with other tools. So that'll have to be a separate drawer. Thankfully, you only need one of those per engine you build, so it's quite easy to just pull the one you need out of the drawer, out of a separate drawer. And then again, as I was also laying this out in my head, I realized that as I'm working on an engine, having a drawer in my toolbox open the whole time, even though I'm only using one drawer, having it open the whole time gets in the way. And so I can't use the countertop above it very easily because it's always the drawer in my way. So I came to the conclusion that I want to make the foam removable from the drawer, so that way when I'm working on the engine, I go to the drawer I need, I just grab the foam, and I'm going to put handles on both sides of it. I'll lift it out, set it on the workbench, and I can work from there, have the drawer shut and be able to move around. So ultimately, I'm going to have shadow foam with the tools I need to build the engine on a little tray that I can take out of the box, set on the workbench, and go from there. And so when I'm working on an engine, all the tools will be right in front of me the whole time. It's similar to, I guess, a lot of shops would put pegboard on the wall and have all the tools laying on the pegboard. Not a fan of pegboard, but I may end up wind up using a couple things, such as like a socket holder for the wall to hold my sockets, and the wrenches as well for it. But yeah, okay. So let me show you how I got this laid out here a second. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got the this is the drawer that I've laid out for the toolbox. The drawer I've laid out for doing the engines. These are all the tools I need to build an engine, minus the 3 on this pad right here. So I've got my ring compressors, dowel bore gauge, and the micrometer here. So when I'm cutting this out, I've laid it out such that all the tools are here. The 4B11 specific stuff is here, so it's a bigger wrist pin. So this is the retainer for the wrist pin installing tool. So circlip injector is what it's called. It uses different sockets for the main studs and a different Allen for the main stud. And then the 4G63 has a smaller wrist pin and then different sockets for the mains. So everything else is there. And then some stuff that I could put on the drawer here, I'm going to hang those from the wall because they are used on pretty much everything. I don't need them on this particular drawer, and I'm going to use them when I'm building long blocks as well as short blocks and anything else I do in this room. So these guys here don't need to be on the drawer. I'm just going to put them elsewhere. And you can see this foam is 2 parts, so there's a red piece and a black piece. I laid it out on the red because it's easier to see, but what I'm actually going to be doing is cutting them out on the black foam. So the black foam has a second side with an adhesive piece of wax paper on it. And what I'll do is I'll take the wax paper off. Actually, what I'll do is I'll trace these tools onto the wax paper first, and then I'm going to cut it out using my X-Acto knife here. So I've got an X-Acto knife, real sharp, fine pointed razor blade, because this foam is pretty easy to cut, but you need to be pretty precise to get around some of these tools. So what I'll do is I'll lay it out, trace it with a marker, cut it out with the knife, and then you push out your cutouts from the black foam and then stick it to the red foam. So let's go ahead and get started here, and I'll show you by outlining it first, and then you'll be able to follow along on this time lapse here. So. Okay, so I've outlined everything on the first sheet here. This is the actually winds up being the top layer of the foam, and you can see all the tools. And one thing you may have noticed is how I had it laid out and how I cut them out is mirrored. It's because what happens is this actually gets flipped over, and this is the bottom side of the sheet. So mirroring it, you need to cut it out mirrored on this white stuff for it to appear in the orientation that I wanted it on the other one. So now that I've got them all laid out, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting them out, and we'll go from there. Okay, as you can see, I got it all cut out and put the tools back in it. I put a couple notches in here, so some of these that are deep are easier to get to. You can stick your fingers in there to get them. There's a couple of them that I may need to add later, like this one here is actually pretty easy to get to, but some of these, and that the ring pliers here sits pretty deep in there as well. But everything else went pretty well on this one. I had to cut a little bit off the edge here because it doesn't quite fit in the drawer. So when I move it over here and try to stick it in the drawer, it may be a tight fit. So we'll check that, and then I'll show you in the drawer. And I've still got to cut this one out over here. I'll cut this one out next. We'll go from there. All right, I got the second one cut out here, and you can see everything fits real nice. I changed my mind as I was cutting it out about the extensions for the dial bore gauge here, so I just left one of them on it and just put the other one in the little slot here. Those are the only two that I use. I have the case with all the other sizes in the toolbox if I ever needed to change it. And then so what it looks like in the drawer here, this is the other one that I just did, so it fits in there real nice. What I'll do is I'll slot for a handle here and a handle over here, and then make it so I can lift it out of the drawer. But that's what it looks like, and it's real easy to reach in here, get the tool out, and it worked really well. So I'm really happy with how this came out. So that's it. It took about 45 minutes per page to cut them out. It doesn't take a real long time. Probably spent twice that trying to decide how to cut them out. Yeah, so next week I'm looking at doing some web page updates, and so we'll see some of the stuff that I'm dealing with in Shopify on that one. All right, thank you very much for watching, and be sure to subscribe.